But it was fun, like the Cliff Lodge was
Like, oh my gosh, it's called the Little Farm, which is like this one really lovely organization. And
That's where they have this.
yeah, it's like they own some people there. Yeah, so really just about doing that about presentations from some of the such there for yes,
You guys were like passing through.
yeah, we went to see
Oh, thanks, guys. Here.
Yes. School had so I was well, she was a senior in Little Depression. Yeah. And so she had known her as well, which is really funny.
So to see dust coming down from the summer road.
So, yeah, so it's really beautiful, that area, you know. Are you Aubrey?
I am Aubrey.
Oh, nice to meet you, in case you're saying that.
Yeah. Forgotten the last one.
Oh, no.
Let me bring the notes.
Ted.
Are there? You can.
those just chargers you
I'll
forgot.
This is all done too. All I'm gonna do is like, do that snap report. Yeah. Take your percent. Good. I'm talking the staff report, which is, you know, not just like a reader's digest here on the digest side. That is totally fine. I will. Do. In any way. It should see.
Oh. Yes, we are.
Hello,
Did you make it back, Roger? There?
I made it back,
Okay.
11 o'clock last night. Man, oh man. It's kind of hard to believe that yesterday morning I had breakfast on a ship on the Adriatic Sea. And here I am, still alive.
And looking good.
You kill a normal person.
Yeah, sir.
Still a no, how can you tell?
Hey, Mayor, it's your show.
Say again,
It's your show.
your shelf?
Your
Yourself?
show. Your show. Your show to lead.
Oh, my shell
Mr. Mayor.
leads.
Right.
Take it away.
You think I'm up to speed? This is.
You've done this a few times.
Okay, I'm hereby calling to order the special meeting of the Alta Town Council for Wednesday, June 4th, 2025 at 9 a.m. for the purposes of discussing a lease to ACE for OLS. I got all that stuff right?
You
I'm a little
did.
groggy.
This is good.
All right.
Start us off.
Okay. All right, looks like, okay, nice. Got our remote,
John.
NDs.
Audio is okay, John, for you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. And you're in Rome, is that correct?
I'm in Rome. I fell asleep in the sun out by the pool. Can you tell?
Oh, not good.
Yeah.
Not good. Boy.
sorry, I'm a minute late here.
No Abe Lincoln.
No, that's right. No, no.
No Abe Lincoln.
All right, we'll just give some opening remarks here, as we described in the packet, we've met with, Sarah Aubrey as ACE representatives a couple times to talk through the outlines of a possible lease agreement for ACE to, occupy OLS and, use it as their primary base for events. You know, we took, I think the experience of, thinking about the future of OLS and the town's interest in OLS, the community's interest in OLS, and then all the public input we took throughout the process of deliberating over whether to try to acquire OLS into, these conversations and have approached it with some key guiding principles. One being ensure that Our Lady of the Snows continue to operate as Alta's community center, and remains accessible for general community use as it always has. The next is to provide Alta community enrichment a stable home, in the long term that allows the organization to grow and provides more stability than it's had in the past. Sure, yeah. We want to cover costs for both organizations. We're both, the town, is gonna, bear some costs we've not borne in the past. We've got, maintenance and upkeep responsibilities and utility bills to pay that we haven't had in the past. So we wanna, cover those costs. ACE will also bear some new costs in this arrangement. We wanna incentivize them to, make this a sustainable arrangement for both parties, by providing them, some opportunities to capture revenue for bookings. And then in the guidelines document, we have a more, finite or detailed allocation of, responsibilities for operations and maintenance that we can talk through a little bit. So some of the highlights, we've thrown around a lot of numbers, for a lease duration. 99 years, 30 years, 10 years, 50 years. And what we both realized independently and then in conjunction was that we are at the outset of a brave new world here when it comes to the fit and function of Our Lady of the Snows in the community, each party's relationship to the building. And we think it makes more sense to start out with a shorter term. We think of it as an initial term on a long-term lease, or just an agreement. And that we will seek a new agreement after the term passes. But so we propose a 2-year term to sort of evaluate the sharing of responsibilities, excuse me. The revenue split model, or whatever revenue split model we settle on with formal annual check-ins to see how it's going. So we would propose that throughout the duration, we assume that we're heading towards a conversation about a longer term arrangement, so that ACE has that stability that we all heard so much from the community about. We propose to start the annual rent at the amount of the existing ACE rental agreement for the building, with some sort of explicit language to cap annual rent increases. We propose 5%. We think that's most likely enough to cover our increases in costs, and a sustainable target for ACE to contemplate in their budget projections. Contingency. Jen and I, in earlier drafts of the guidelines document, we were, tying ACE's long-term occupancy of the building to the mission, the vision, mission values type material. We agreed that we don't want to make it onerous for ACE to update those documents. It's onerous enough as it is for a nonprofit or any organization to change their bylaws or guiding principles content. But again, we think it's in the town and the community's interest that there is accessible, low cost arts, culture, education, and wellness programming provided in that facility. For the long term, we think that's kind of an essential service for the community. So we propose tying that in just more generally than tying it to the mission explicitly. John Byrne and staff, John and staff had some dialogue via email after we sent these out, and just about the contingency. And I think I acknowledge that it's maybe not as like a material in this shorter term arrangement. It's maybe not as important to highlight the contingency in the shorter term arrangement, because the likelihood that ACE is going to change significantly in the next 2 years seems exceedingly low. But perhaps it's something to focus more on as we talk about a longer term arrangement. Event scheduling. So this is kind of the big change for ACE, or the big one of the responsibility increases for ACE. ACE has indicated they're willing or interested in managing all the bookings for the facility. Sorry, this is somewhat of a different. We'll talk about events, ACE events and bookings simultaneously. So we propose to essentially have ACE reserve chunks of time at the facility the same as they do currently. So 3 afternoons and evenings a week. ACE does, and we propose to allow ACE to continue to schedule feature events months in advance. And ACE will, of course, continue to have flexibility to hold additional events based on needed availability. How many events a year?
175.
175. So anyways, that's a lot of events, and they're all beneficial to the community. So they needed to serve flexibility to operate that way. And then so because that's a significant chunk of time of the total availability at the facility, we propose to have ACE manage all the bookings through an online platform. They would operate with a non-discrimination policy of sorts to ensure general public access, equal opportunity. And that the bookings information will be transparent, so they'll share it with us when we need to know that information. The town will maintain the building. We talked about a number of arrangements for maintenance, but since we're gonna own it, we should maintain it. We'll pay utility bills. We'll clean it periodically. Ace will keep the building neat and tidy in between events so that whatever else needs to happen in the facility, such as other scheduled events, can do so in good condition. The revenue sharing proposal is a little more complicated, and we can certainly speak to that in more detail. But we propose a system of 3 tiers so that ACE essentially covers its costs for operating the bookings first. And then after that, the revenue split goes towards the town covering our costs. And then once ACE town's costs are covered, then the split changes a little bit more. I realize that the graphic or the chart in the guidelines document has like a lot more rows than 3. So maybe that's something that led to this seeming a lot more complex than it is, but so we can talk about that. We propose including a right of first offer on future purchase of the building in an agreement, or so I don't know if that would be in a rental agreement or some other kind of agreement. Finally, we did we provide a preview of the termination language? Okay. We provided to Sarah?
No.
Okay.
Oh, did I?
We didn't include any termination, notification and termination language or concepts for notification termination language in the guidelines document, but legal counsel did provide that in the last couple of days. John made the comment that we tie that sort of tie that to what was John's comment specifically? I'm sorry, I'm blanking on it, but there are a couple of notification timelines that John recommended we sync up. And I think in our guidelines document, we contemplate a 1-year notification for any need to repurpose the building, for instance. So anyways, do you want to speak a little bit to the termination recommendation, Jen? Have that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the main point would be like the way it was suggested by legal counsel is that it's a 90-day termination period, which I think is just a fairly standard, 30 to 90 days seems fairly standard. I mean, with a 2-year lease agreement, that's probably okay. I think if we contemplate the longer term lease, we might want to adjust that a little bit, but
Yeah.
I suspect that's, I mean, you'll have to tell me if you guys have a problem with that, but there's some more specific, I mean, I can. But
Since we haven't really had an opportunity to dialogue with Cameron about this, can I ask you a question, Cameron?
Yeah.
So in your recommendation, was it the duration? Was it the 90-day time period? Is that key, or is it more just sort of the structure of the language? That makes sense.
Everything was just a proposal. The 90 days was just because it's a 2-year lease. It was a longer term lease. I think, we had talked about a 1-year termination just to give everyone a chance to react if that ever actually occurred. The 90 days is really just a proposed term because it's a 2-year agreement.
And we could really select the duration that works for the parties. Okay.
and then maybe just, I will say that the way Cameron framed this is there's termination for cause. So if,
Right.
if we feel that ACE is not meeting the terms of the lease agreement, right? That was a 30-day window. to vacate the premise, right? But if it's termination without cause, no fault of ACE's, then that would be the 90-day.
Yeah,
The way
cause
that's
it's
drafted.
only their option. We're obligated to lease, but you guys get to, it's about you guys, if you guys want an out for whatever reason. For ACEs.
For either,
Oh,
either party, actually,
okay.
So if either party breaches the agreement,
yeah.
I think what
So
we
for
talked
cause
about-
would be dependent on ACE, but without cause could be either entity.
That doesn't seem fair to ACE. I might be missing something. I don't think that's right. I think that's wrong. I
Okay.
think we as the town have obligated to give them the lease. They have the lease for, just say it's 24 months for now, for the start.
Yeah.
We can't opt out on that, but they can. And so it's a question of how much lead time they give us that we think is reasonable within the 2-year window, which 90 days or 30 days probably sounds fine. But it's really for you, whether if you guys want it out, because we can't suddenly decide with 30 days, 90 days notice to go. It's over. The town can't do that. Am I the only
Yeah,
one seeing it this way?
I think I'm having something vision that he's having too, like, let's say. In February of next year, you guys are
Town
like,
council.
hey, actually, we're gonna use, the town is like, we're actually wanna use the building for something else. You have 90 days to
Right.
get out, that's
can't do
really
that.
scary.
Yeah.
No, so that's right. That's why
Like,
to me,
ICE
this,
is really good at pivoting, but like, we need to like,
no, but
know.
that's not even acceptable. Like, we're offering them a lease, except outside of cause, failure to pay or something like that. We don't have the option to terminate the lease without cause.
So
In that window.
maybe we need to. That was maybe poorly executed to just sort of roll that out, having not previewed it. Maybe
Yeah.
we need to
Oh,
workshop that
I think we
between
can, for sure.
our working group and bring a.
Yeah.
Bring a.
Because no landlord does that. You can't do
Hey,
that.
John had John had something to say here.
Yeah, I think when we talked about these different timelines, and just as reference, and it doesn't have to be this way, but generally, if it was a true commercial lease, you would try to make the notice timelines the same. You would try to use the same time periods going each way. That becomes less important with such a short lease to start. And so a bunch of the things that Chris and I sort of talked about kind of went away when the term came down to just 2 years. I mean, in 2 years, we're going to be lucky if we've figured out yet whether we think it's working. And so, living with shorter timelines in both directions kind of makes sense. And some of the sensitivity I had to some specific things, I didn't like the word ensure. ACE would ensure that the building was good to go when really most of the responsibility for that is falling into the town's set of responsibilities. But again, it's only 2 weeks, or it's only 2 years. So I like the approach that they're taking about starting with a short time period, because trying to sit here and say to ourselves, we've got this all figured out, we know how we want it to work, that's just not very realistic. And I like the 2-year period. It takes a lot of pressure off us to get every detail right. And this point, for instance, that Dan just made, I think if it was a 10-year lease, that point would be really important. In a 2-year lease, the paint's still going to be wet. The ink's still going to be wet on the contract.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically a trial marriage. And with expectation will be renewed or extended after 2 years, but it's going to take a while for us to figure out how to live together.
I just don't think, I don't think in the spirit of matrimony that the one party can cancel the marriage within the initial agreed upon time. I don't think as a town, we should put that in our lease, that we could certainly cancel it. I just don't think it should be in the.
Yeah, Cameron wanted to say something.
Yeah, so my apologies, when I put the termination language in, I just pulled that out of a standard commercial lease. And so that's meant to have either party be able to address whatever situation came up. I do agree with Dan in the discussion that it would put ACE in a worse position if the town could just opt out with 90 days. And so we can easily change that wording.
Okay, That's all, I just wanted to make sure we did that.
Yeah, my apologies.
I agree with that as well. I mean, if we need to opt out for some reason, this is only a 2-year lease. We can figure stuff out within that lease period. I don't think we need to put that 90-day the town can opt out in. Long-term lease may be different, but for now, I think leave it out because I think Sarah's right, can't have them pivot that quick for something. And as the landlord, I don't think we should be, bailing on a lease agreement. We should see it to the end unless there's cause.
I think we're all in agreement.
I agree. I mean, my big takeaway from all the public dialogue and input that occurred over the last couple of months is that the community wants ACE to like above the input that I saw and participated in, that the primary outcome that the most common point was that ACE needs a long-term home.
Yeah.
And so I agree that we should make this favorable to ACE. I guess I just wanna sort of hearken to some of the concepts the council was bringing up about, needing to relocate the post office on a temporary basis to Our Lady of the Snows. And so, and I don't think that's gonna happen. I think there are probably most likely other alternatives that we could find to operate a post office in the event we gotta, rebuild this facility. But I guess I'm thinking back to some of our conversations at the town council about, the utility of the building to the town. And so anyway, maybe that's just something to think about more carefully when we get to a longer term arrangement. And in this 2-year time frame, it's not important.
I think you're right, and it goes back to what John said, the paint's not, we haven't even applied the paint.
Yeah.
Not that it's not dry. So I don't think that anything's happening in the next couple of years, and I think in the meantime, the important thing is stability for ACE and terms that work for them to give them
Sounds good.
the ability to do their mission or purpose, whatever we say in so.
That's good input.
Yeah, I mean, I see it as a period in which we're going to learn to live in this new arrangement, both sides. And we'll basically establish some practices, written or otherwise, that's working, that's not working. We'll change the stuff that's not working and so forth.
Well, and from a broader town perspective and strategy, during this period, we need to pivot as a town as well to what are our requirements now? Because we solved the 25-year requirement through the purchase of a community center. So what does that look like? We need these couple of years to do that, I think.
Yes, right.
Given the speed of this town.
That's a great way to couch this tier arrangement in our sort of general strategic outlook.
But meantime, what's important to everybody is that ACE has a stable place that still works for them.
Yeah. And in the long term, right? I mean, that's something.
That covers both. That goes everywhere.
Would this be an appropriate time to talk about content neutral?
Talk about what?
Yeah.
Would this be an appropriate time to talk about content neutral?
Sorry, what did you say, Jen?
Did you get through everything you wanted to get through in opening?
Yes, I didn't have anything else to share.
I wanted to give Ace an option to just kind of address the council, and then maybe we can go
Yes.
with their particular.
Does that sound okay, John? This was one of John's
Sure,
comments.
At some point, we should touch base on that. I don't know whether you guys came up with a different wording for that or anything, but it doesn't have to be read right now.
Let's get into that though, John, because that is sort of one of the sort of ACE flexibility conditions we're contemplating. Another being ACE can move its office down there, which could, lead to some, improvements or changes to the building. So let's get into that after ACE has a
I just want to say that town employees and myself and the ACE Our Lady Committee has worked tirelessly to create this lease that will hopefully make both sides happy. We both have our needs. And I also think that this lease will make the community at large feel comfortable as well, about the building, because even though they don't own the building, if people look at the building as theirs, is what I have very much learned in the past few months.
Mhm.
We feel that this lease will make ACE feel at home in the building. It's been our home, and this lease, I feel, will make us still feel like a little bit of ownership, even though we don't have the ownership. To have a responsibility with the building, will make us feel at home there. I also think that it's gonna take pressure off the town and town employees, if we take on the bookings of the building. And like I said, keeping the community, feeling safe, that the building will be of the community. The short-term lease was actually my idea. Walked into a meeting with Jen and Chris, and I was like, hey, I don't mean to throw this meeting like off guard, but what do you guys, instead of like a 30-year lease, like, why don't we do a trial period? Like, we have no idea. We have an idea, but like, we don't know if it's gonna work. Let's do a trial period. And it made me go, and I've had a lot of people ask me, like, what is it like? We went from 30 to 2 years. And I'm like, no, we need to figure this out. We need to make sure it's good for the town, and it's good for ACE, and not only for the organization, but for the both sides employees. ACE is financially stable to take this on and run the bookings. Our employees are ready. We will ensure that the building is open to all. I know it's been a topic, and we will make sure whoever applies to use the building has an opportunity to use the building, as far as like it's in the scope of like legality.
In scope of what, sir?
like legality.
Oh,
Like,
Legality.
yeah.
I thought you said galley.
I thought you said galley too.
Oh, no. No, like,
Kitchen.
it's not like illegal things can't happen
Right.
in there. And a lot of talk has been about if ACE is going to change, or is ACE is going anywhere. We updated our mission in 2017 to include mental health. We used the word well-being, and we tidied up the mission because it was 20 years old. And right now, I can't predict the future, but I'm not seeing us changing our mission or what we're doing. So I want to put everyone's mind at ease at that. And myself and my board, my executive committee, really want to let everyone know that, like, if there's no Sarah, there's still going to be an ACE. I promise you guys. Like, I'm working on my succession plan. And I don't see myself leaving here anytime soon. But really, like, I'm going to use Alta Snow Safety as an example. Titus left. Grom took it on. It kept going. Jonathan Morgan and the team is doing it. It's still going. Like, just because a leader of an organization changes, it doesn't mean the organization's going to end. There will be changes. There will be growth periods. But just because there's no Sarah, there's no ACE.
They'll love
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah. But and
Serve.
Well, it's your responsibility as a leader is to provide that
it's turnkey.
succession.
And it is pretty turnkey right now. It's really amazing, the stage that we're at. And everything in this lease was not ACE, it was not the town. We worked on this together. I just had a lot of people asking about that. It was a full working together. So, that's it.
I've been completely divorced from the world for 2 weeks. And what you just said, Sarah, really shows through that this was a joint effort by the town staff and your community. And I want to comment on the difference in the tone of this meeting than the one that occurred, was it a month ago? Which was rather strained, shall we say? And boy, is like coming to a new world. I should go away again for a couple of weeks. I think that worked.
I did not mean to,
No,
I should have
No, it's
thought
not.
more carefully about you, about the origin of the concept for the 2-year agreement. I realized we came into that meeting with us talking about whether it was gonna be 30 or 50 or 99.
Oh, no, that's fine. I wasn't.
Still fun.
I just wanted everyone to know that that ACE was okay with that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't being something ripped away.
No, what's great is, I mean, because the going in position from the town, including the council, was the longer lease because that's what you guys wanted. And so we were behind that because it's what you wanted. And if it's not what you want, we're behind it because you don't want it. No, seriously.
Yeah, and we had talked about, I think, one of the goals here is, I think the 2-year trial period is gonna be a little learning, and I think that coming out of that, I think there will be an opportunity for, hey, we feel comfortable, there's something we tweak, and then hopefully there is a period for a longer opportunity after that.
I absolutely believe that's true.
Right.
I think that's what's gonna happen.
I mean, I
So
think
Mayor-
we're all prepared to live together happily for 2 years. And we're gonna learn how to tune things in that 2 years. There we are.
Is now the time to bring up some.
I was gonna say,
questions?
I would, Mayor, if you wanna go around to the different council members, we'd love to get, answer questions from each of the council members now, and if they. Wanna advocate something or other, it'd be great to hear
Well,
from them.
before I do that, Jen, is there any element of this meeting agenda that's comments from the public?
Oh, yeah. Didn't I have a public comment on that? You're very right. What's public comment? I don't know. Does anybody wanna make public comment? I don't think we have anybody here.
Okay, all right.
Thank you,
All right.
though. I appreciate that.
So,
Can we
all
get
right,
out-
let's I'll start at lower left of my screen. Elise, you want to say anything?
When I read this a couple days ago when a staff sent it or last week, I am so impressed with the detail. I mean, I feel like I've done past things a little bit, obviously not a lease agreement like this with OLS, but I feel like we have done stuff where it's come to the council and we're just hashing out all these like teeny little details, which we are probably going to do here in a couple things. But I feel like this is like, you guys work so hard on this with an ACE in the town, and it's so well packaged. And I'm really glad to hear that Sarah is, the 2-year was her idea, because I've also heard a little bit of that in the community. So that was, I think, a question people had. But I like this. I think what we talked about earlier about the termination part, that was the only question and worry I had, and we kind of addressed that part already. I think this is great, and I hope we can continue in 2 years from now, we're gonna be like, let's continue this on with a couple tweaks of the lease and have a longer term one. But I don't have anything specific right now.
I'll sum that up by saying you're giving them an A+ on their homework.
Roger, it does look like we have a public comment on Zoom. Can we go back to
Oh, we do
that?
have a comment on Zoom? Okay. All right.
So Megan Oliver with ACE.
Oh,
Sorry, that was a little weird. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I'm just here listening from my house. I just kind of want to reiterate like what you guys are saying. I like that there's a lot of teamwork. And I know that the booking thing is a possibility. And Sarah and I have been in communication about how that might change my job, and just how, if that is a thing that the town council wants ACE to take on, that is something that I'm very much looking forward to. It's something that I feel confident in doing, and supporting ACE and the town and everyone else involved. So I just wanted to throw that out there too, just so you guys know.
Great. You like this arrangement too, is I think what you said.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other public? Molly? All right.
FMC.
All right, so continuing on my screen, let's go to John.
yeah, I think that going to 2 years was was a great idea, and it makes it more of a relaxed trial than trying to nail down everything today. I had just a couple little nitpicks, most of which I think become less important in a 2-year lease, so that's good. One of the things that Chris and I spent a little time talking about was, what does content neutral mean to you? I didn't love that word, those words. Chris was, well, it means we wouldn't do this, we wouldn't do that, and and it wouldn't be political. But of course, things like meet the candidate night, that's
Well, I
that's
think,
political.
John, I think what the documents, the content neutral term is used in the context of ACE getting to kind of move into the building and make some aesthetic changes, some minor aesthetic changes that would probably be, to some extent well outlined in the final agreement or in the actual agreement. So we're thinking about like, vulgarity, obscenity, in a mural on the wall in the restroom or the foyer, for instance. So yes, content neutral is, I don't imagine that's the term that would be in the agreement, and maybe I think what we're going for is kind of government facility minimum standards. So I don't know if Cameron wants to speak to that
Culturally
at
appropriate
all.
instead of
Well,
content neutral.
That's in the eye of the beholder, and it,
Or, yeah,
um,
or within
Yeah.
the.
That relates more to the physical changes, painting, whatever, rather than actual events.
right,
Is what-
right,
is what you're
yes,
saying.
Meant to be more for aesthetics in the program.
And
yeah,
I liked Sarah's word of the like within legal terms or something like that, so then it's not content neutral, but you're gonna allow any event that's legally allowed.
Yeah.
Whatever that short phrase would be.
There's
So
nothing wrong with Allie.
it's a double-edged sword. So we can require community standards or environments that are suitable for the facility. But on the flip side of that, the town cannot restrict content that the town disfavors. So, for example, if somebody wants to rent the building for some organization and we dislike the organization, we can't necessarily deny that building to that organization, right? The government can restrict expression of messaging to time, place, and manner. And so I think what the content neutrality is, we're talking about the manner of expression. Like, we don't want, things that are offensive to culturally, socially, etc. But for example, if we opened the facility to rent for a church, we could not then deny another church that we didn't care for to rent that same building, right? If we rent it for one organization that has a specific message, we have to leave that open to any organization. So there's going to need to be some policy to cover that. But so it cuts both ways.
The content neutral was based off of what will be like hung on the walls in the vestibule and in the bathrooms, essentially.
Rather than what will be presented. Rather than what will be presented, right?
Correct.
can't take the mayor's name in vain in a mural on the floor. Maybe you can.
Okay. John, did you have some more?
Well, I had just sort of wordy nitpick things. I didn't love the thing. ACE will ensure that the building is ready and in working order for all booked events. I just don't like the word ensure. That just seems like too much responsibility to, there's an awful lot of responsibilities to the town's part. So maybe endeavor or something other than ensure, I guess, would be my comment there.
We're looking for like broom swept and debris free, right? Like,
Yeah, no garbage in the garbage cans.
let us know if there's a plumbing issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It sure suggests that you have some like lingering responsibility if you fail to meet this standard. It's a raging blizzard. And all the snow removal work doesn't get done to its normal standard, is ACE in violation of its responsibility because it failed to ensure that the snow removal would be done.
Well, and just to be clear on snow removal, we're proposing to manage that. We're gonna do the snow removal, we're gonna pay the employee, so that's part of the maintenance responsibilities.
Yeah, and right, and so that's why I think it's kind of inappropriate to have that the word ensure, because so many of the things are going to be dependent on meeting our responsibilities, that it can't just sort of flip around at the appointed hour and become ACE's fault. You know what I mean? They should use the best efforts to make sure that the building's ready to go. So it's just a word choice there. And I think the rest of it really, it'd be good to see the draft. I think this revenue structure makes it seem really complex. I think we could either simplify it or leave it the way it is. Oh, and then there was the one other nitpick about what was it, the expenses, that on the fee sheet it says Little Cottonwood Canyon nonprofits will pay, and the number is $150, but it's really ACE is going to pay $4,000, and it's really Little Cottonwood Canyon nonprofits other than ACE are going to pay $150 a night, because ACE is paying sort of a year-round rent of $4,000. It won't also be subject to the nightly charges. Is that how you're
double counting them? Yeah.
So just to be clear on the fee schedule, that is the ACE's rent. We'll have to figure out whether that gets put on the town schedule, but we provided that draft of ACE's rental agreements and their fee structure just for the council's benefit. That is not something that the town would adopt, because we're not the ones that are doing that. Does that make sense to the council? So, I mean, we wanted to provide it for your benefit so that you can see the direction that, it's part of all this, but it's not something that the town is adopting.
Except that perhaps the one where it says Town of Alpha, you wouldn't charge us for that, because the original proposal was to charge the town when they went there. So I do appreciate that one space, but I fully recognize that whatever you guys want to charge, whoever you want to charge, with a printed fee schedule so that we assure equal access to the building is great, but I would ask that the town can use it for free.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure.
Yeah, that's
For a
something.
very long time, I was told by the town, no, you need to charge the town. Just so you know. And I was the one that was like, okay, let's charge the town. Then it went, I didn't feel comfortable charging the town. So it went like this.
Right, and that was when we were kind of talking about you taking on more responsibility. Now that we've kind of reeled back a little bit from that, the pendulum kind of
But we've landed at the right spot.
shifted a little bit, so that we're taking on, the utilities and more of the maintenance stuff.
Yeah.
It's a little bit tricky though, because you don't want to get in a discrimination situation. I mean, I think the more ACE fits to a specific fee structure, and I think you could just have a line before that and say ACE is going to pay the town an annual rent of $4,000 or whatever the number is. But then on the fee schedule, Sarah's going to want to be consistent in what she charges similar organizations. And in Cameron's example of a church, for instance, you don't want to be charging the Buddhists less than you're charging the Protestants, just because you think Buddhism's cool. Right?
Any nonprofit out of the canyon would pay what that top line number.
Events.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any organization out of the canyon.
Yeah.
Top line number of the 4,000. Nobody else is being
No.
offered a flat deal of $4,000 for the year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only number that would be contemplated on the town's fee schedule is ACE's rent.
That seems smart.
Okay.
If I might,
Oh,
Roger, if I
yeah,
might interject a comment.
please.
I think this idea of a short-term leases trial period is great. I think if we're going to go to a longer-term lease, some of the issues that we're discussing now really need to be fleshed out. And what I would suggest is that they're fleshed out with language that identifies the intent behind the specifics. So let me give you an example of that. I found the revenue proposal difficult to understand. And yet when Chris explained the intent, it's completely easy to understand. What it was, first ACE gets to recoup the administrative costs of the bookings, then the town of Alta gets to recoup some of its operational costs, then it goes to a different split later on to incent ACE to do things. That intent is very clear. And I think that if you include language like that in the long-term lease, and similarly, I like, as I run a nonprofit, I like the idea that nonprofits get cheaper rents than maybe a wedding event. And if the town wants to have that as part of the intent, rather than focusing in on the $150, I think they should actually outline what is the intent behind some of these things.
Yeah. A wedding could never be considered a nonprofit event.
Is 150 consistent with what other people have been paying recently, Sarah?
Did you say, John?
Is the $150 a night consistent with what other nonprofits have been paying recently?
Yes, and this fee schedule is somewhat based off of what is currently happening at the building. Consulted with Connie, very much so on the tiered level.
$150 seems like a lot to me for a nonprofit, especially when you think of some of the events are 3 or 4 or 5 people. But if it's what we've been charging lately and you want to keep charging the same, that's also fine with me too. I could also see for the Canyon nonprofits making it $100, just out of a sense of generosity.
It'd be $150 for an Alta or Little Cottonwood Canyon nonprofit to use the building. Currently, maybe none of the current nonprofits rent the building. Maybe in the past 5 years, only a handful of times, I would say. And then if you are a nonprofit from outside of Little Cottonwood Canyon, you would pay the full price of $800.
And my understanding of this agreement is to give ACE the power to run this whole thing, and we are not to interfere with your fee structure.
Right.
So we
Yeah.
shouldn't micromanage what you're doing. Thank you for generating income.
And obviously, if they're evil, we call Evil Sarah, my replacement, Evil Sarah. If Evil Sarah runs the building and all of a sudden the fees are crazy, I think the town absolutely should say something. I don't think.
And it runs against your profit thing, and we'll get to the money structure in a bit. But that's why, as far as what Craig mentioned, the long-term intention would be this is a community space and the town as a community owns it. And so town council meetings should take place there for free.
Yeah.
Retreat should take place there for free. And that should perhaps be in the intent of the document. But otherwise, us micromanaging what you charge, I think is not the town's business, nor do the town staff want to be involved.
I have a question for Cameron, just in lease agreements, how much intent language is typically there, or is this a supplemental, would this be a supplemental piece to the actual lease agreement?
Yeah, good question. So I think we could just include that in the whereas in the preamble section. Just saying, hey, this is what we're trying to do. You can also include just a statement of intent in that specific section of the lease. Like, this is what we're trying to do. Here's the language we think accomplishes that. So either way is fine.
Thank you.
Okay, shall we move on to the next council person in my rotation? That's Dan.
So here's what I like. I like that it, right out of the gate, it keeps ACE's costs down so they can continue to focus on their mission. And I'm such a big believer in that. And I think this is all working out very well. The second thing is, I think it's giving you guys the flexibility that you want, but combined with what you feel is a projected stability to keep you guys moving forward. So I'm really hip on that. And I also believe it'll work. I think this is gonna really work. I'm such a fan of where we are now. I'd like to include somewhere during this initial period, just from the town standpoint, that we start moving forward on how we recognize the building's history and lineage. You know, is that a plaque? It is of some sort, but what does that look like? I just want that in our mind, because to me, that's an important thing, a part of this heritage in this community in particular is very, very important. And we have to acknowledge where it came from and who it is. And yeah, I know we're gonna talk about some of the budget stuff, so I'll save that. I just think it's great, though, that the town's feline contingent continues to appear on the screen on occasion and is represented here today, even though they haven't had the chance to speak.
Who are you talking about?
Yep.
Oh, you guys can't see it.
Oh.
Molly's cat shows up on occasion.
Oh, I see. All right.
I just think it's an inclusive community, and I think that's important.
All
I
right.
was about without much, and I was like, where was that coming in?
I have a vision and a plan for honoring the history of the.
That's
building.
awesome. I can't wait to see
Just
that.
haven't moved forward on it because there's no reason.
Priorities.
No reason to waste time on something that I possibly couldn't do if.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. I think it's gonna be cool. So it's a cool part of this whole thing. That's
Okay,
it.
Carolyn.
So, wow, you guys have worked tirelessly. This is awesome. I thought I was like, this is great. I am hoping that this gives Ace like hey, this is really our home and we're really excited to make it our home and have our offices there and decorate it and do all that stuff. And I hope that it gives you more control over that space. So I am thrilled to see that. When I think about the comments that we all received and the individual conversations I had with people, it all involved what Chris mentioned, which was, hey, that's Ace's home, what are you guys doing? So I think one, we've addressed that. Two, we also heard a lot about, what are you doing with the town's money? How dare you spend $1 million of my taxpayers' dollars? So when I look at the fiscal arrangement, number one, I say, great. Ace gets to keep Our Lady of the Snows, same arrangement, same price structure. Yahoo, I can get behind that. When I think about all those numbers, I was excited to hear Craig say, ooh, this was confusing because I'm like, geez, as a doc, I'm not a numbers girl, you know? And so I was like, what is going on here? But for me, I would like to see that structure simplified for the following reasons. I think that it's gonna cost the town something to have the building and to take over the building. Any money that Ace makes off of renting the building is a win for you. It's like a great way to fundraise kind of in a backdoor sort of way. So I would love to see like a single structured agreement, whether that's the 65-35, because that's how you guys thought about it, but all money from the get-go is split 65-35 all across the line. And I understand you're like, hey, wait a minute, we want to make sure we get our $3,500 back. I believe that we will pretty readily get that $3,500 back. So in honoring people in the community who said, what are you doing spending our taxpayers' dollars? I would suggest that we show the community or represent them by saying, hey, yes, we are going to make the building cost neutral because any money you raise will pay for utilities, will be put in this pot for upgrading, we'll be doing those things. The second part of that is I recognize that, hey, you wanna, decorate the bathrooms or do whatever, you've mentioned that, and I'm like, Yahoo, that's great. I wanna make sure that that's not a build cost to the town. And I assume that was your intent, Sarah, but I'm just kind of mentioning sort of the comments that we heard were those kind of two comments. I want you to decorate the bathroom, however content neutral, culturally appropriate that means. But I don't necessarily think that the taxpayers' dollars should go for that. So that's my one concern overall with the lease. And then my last comment is, I would like to go back to feeling vilified by ACE when this came forward, and I would very much appreciate a social media campaign that states how collaboratively you worked with the town and how excited you are for your new home and your lease. And I would love multiple social media posts addressing the collaborative effort that took place and how excited you are.
I have a plan for that. Based off of what happens at this meeting.
Okay. I think that's all on my list.
Okay, I would like to make the following suggestion that at this stage, we don't try to work out all the details because those are we're gonna tune this over the next 2 years, and what details we might work out right now are gonna be, oh, well, we shouldn't have done that. We should have done it a different way. I think we've got plenty of time to work out the details, and I'm not concerned, given the relationship that we've established, that we will not come to mutual agreement on what those details should be. Second thing is that I think we should develop a squawk list. And that is over time, we're going to start taking a list of stuff that doesn't work, or even by omission, stuff that does work. And that those are the things that we're going to try to address, correct, fix as we approach the 2-year limit, and not try to necessarily fix them in real time, but maybe as a bundle. And that's all I have to say, except, well, of course, what everybody else has said, this is, you guys have done a terrific job jointly in getting this thing together. I mean, I mean, given the state of the affairs of 6 weeks ago, one would be a little hard to imagine that this is such a collaborative arrangement now. Although I think we all felt it in our heart, it was just that the tone was such that, boy, how are we going to get there? And I think we've gotten there. Okay, John, do you want to say something more?
Clarification. I think the graduated scale was to help ACE potentially engage additional manpower to handle. So the circumstances changing a little bit, and that they're actually going to take on more responsibility, and they're going to need another person. And I think that was the origin of that. Doesn't mean we can't change it to how Carolyn described it, just a little kind of why it's the way it is, I think.
Yeah, if I may, just kind of summarizing what I'm hearing from the council, I think 99% of the points are things that we can easily address in what we're doing.
And incredibly
So
well
addressing
Yeah.
the language of content neutral, culturally appropriate, maybe not using the word ensure, having an intent statement, and then making sure that the language on the content neutral, both that and expenses associated with painting is like very clearly spelled out. Those are kind of my list things. On the financial arrangement and the tiered system, John, I mean, you nailed it. That was the point. We started talking about 2 tiers to keep it really simple. And then the conversation evolved into, well, let's make sure, trying to make sure ACE does cover that initial investment. And so that's where the 3rd tier came. And so I think going from 2 to 3, made it that much more complex. But I would love to hear if, you have a suggestion that you want us to consider, or if the council wants to give us directive, and we can have a conversation about that. Our goal is to try and take all this input and make it as comfortable for both parties as we can. So please feel free to make suggestions.
I'm fine. I think the
yourselves.
tier is, I think the way you presented the tier is fine. I mean, we're talking about a 2-year lease. I think like Roger said, We're gonna learn some things. I mean, there might be some things Ace wants to do. I mean, there's a chance in 2 years Ace might want to come back and be like, hey, we'd rather go back to a two-tier. What, I think that what you guys have suggested, it sounds like it works for Ace and it works for the town, and we can tweak it if we need to. Moving forward, we're not gonna, I don't know if we're gonna be able to hash out a whole perfect system right now. I think you
Nope.
guys, it's gonna be a little bit of a trial and error. I mean, if what Ace comes back to us in a year and says, hey, this isn't working and we've got another year to go on our lease, I mean, we could also address it then. Until it gets implemented, I don't know if we're going to know all the exact details of it. I'm fine with what you've proposed. I don't know what you need from the council for, you mentioned something on the agenda about maybe a possible action from us. I don't know if that's what you need, Jen. But I'm good with what you proposed.
Yeah, we would, I mean, if the council feels ready and you wanna direct staff to like follow the guidelines with this, kind of list, I have a bullet points of things to address. Basically, the way we understand it as staff is that we would take that, we would actually work on the technical term sheet of a lease agreement and stuff, and then it would be administered by staff. There wouldn't be another review by council moving forward.
You've done an outstanding job, and I don't have a problem with where you've come to, and I trust that there will be a mutually agreed upon thing, and I've just stated what I've heard from the community as far as financial obligations.
And I think we realized that we should have included Jen's profit and loss projections for facility operations in the meeting packet. That would help rationalize why we think the revenue split in the report is gonna make ends meet for the town.
Well, and
At
you
least.
can, and you post that publicly and the public can see it too,
And-
which helps.
And furthermore, I think we should emphasize, because I don't think it came up yet, that we think Ace managing the bookings is not only beneficial or preferable because it reduces the need for the town to create a new program, but also because we think they're gonna do a better job. They have a exponentially larger reach in terms of communications than the town will ever have already. They're in a network of organizations that needs space. And that's just sort of in their nature. So that's why we are confident that, perhaps not right away, but over the course of a couple of years, that this space is gonna be kind of revitalized or more or busier than it's been in the past. And we think that is part of that.
How do you envision this going forward from here?
Yeah.
Are you looking for us to approve this sort of on an unedited basis today, and then you're going to handle the actual development of the lease and the signing of the lease administratively? Or, which would, I think, be fine with all of us.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
my question too. What are the next steps?
I think that's what Jen envisioned. That's what Jen just described, rather, is one way we could go, and we certainly could bring a final agreement back to the council for a formal motion. But legally, we don't need to. And we do, of course, we are anticipate closing on the building by the end of this present month, at which time, Ace will not be in any sort of agreement with the owner. So we do need to get an agreement in place to protect Ace and protect the town.
It's another one of these questions that's answered by the fact that it's a 2-year lease.
Right.
And so to sort of give you broad latitude to run with the ball from here and get it to the finish line just makes even more sense, because it's going to be a 2-year lease when you get to the finish line, not a 20-year lease.
Do you guys do you want to vote from us to move this on, or was the town staff feel that we are in agreement and that's good for you?
No, I mean, I did put on the agenda, item number 3 is discussion and possible action to direct staff and legal counsel to proceed in drafting and executing a lease agreement with Alta Community Enrichment for Our Lady of the Snow Centers that follows the lease agreement guidelines as proposed.
I move that we do that as stated by Jen.
Yeah.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
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 All right, unanimous. All right, with that, are we ready to terminate here? I think
That is
we
next
are.
on the agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, was that a motion?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, I second that. All right, all in favor of motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great meeting, folks. Thanks for putting this together.
Thank you all very, very much. Great job.
Thanks
you
for
guys.
meeting early. It really makes it easier. Thank you so much.
Say hi to the
And I remind you that when you